is that in many cases they gather together everything that's been written since the early 20th century up through the 60s and 70s, and then reformat it and repeat it. Yeah. But I wanted to work with sources that no one had ever worked with before. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I used courthouse records, I used the governor's papers, I used the records of the Kentucky Adjutant General's office. I read every issue. Frankfort had 2 newspapers during the Civil War era. Mm-hmm. I read every issue of both newspapers from the presidential election of 1860 until the spring of 1866. Mm-hmm. And of course, it gave you a real feel for, you know, who the movers and shakers were, what was going on locally, that sort of thing. So yeah, I rolled up my sleeves and did a pretty deep archaeological dig in paper, so to speak.
I can imagine. Well, let me ask Russ. Russ, being one of the publishers of the book, what excites you about it? Why did you all pick it up?
Well, we commissioned Jim to write this book because we knew that there was a story there that has never really been told before. Mm-hmm. In all the other books related to Kentucky and the Civil War, the story of Frankfort gets about a paragraph or less. Mm-hmm. And there was so much that happened here with the state government here making the decisions and the things that occurred in our state that benefited and reacted against the folks here in community in Frankfort. It was just a story that had never been told. And Jim and his research have found things that absolutely blew some of our compadres apart. Tom Fugate and Nicky Hughes are well versed in Kentucky Civil War history, and Jim and his research turned up things that none of us had ever heard of before related to Fort Hill and to the actual story of Frankfort and the Civil War. I think it's interesting to put a face on some of the soldiers that were involved in the war, both North and South, white and black. And we have an appendix in the book that has over 2,000 names in it that relate to either those who lived in Frankfort or were born in Frankfort that served from Franklin County, either for the North or the South, or were white or black soldiers. Mm-hmm. And we mentioned Breathitt County. We had a fellow by the name of Martin Van Buren South, who is on my Murder and Mayhem tour that I do in October. And he was served in the Civil War. He was murdered. We have another fellow, Thompson Scroggins, that's in the book. And he was a Civil War Confederate soldier that murdered somebody. And we tell his story in our little section on the soldiers. And then there's Silas Hodges, who was an attorney after the war was over, and he had been for the South to begin with Morgan's Raiders, and then he decided he better change over to the North. Uh-huh. And so that change for him developed into him winding up shooting somebody that had been badgering him, as calling him a spy for the South and everything. So finally, so these stories continued to work into this quilt work that Jim was talking about in other areas. Tom Buford was one of the heroes at Fort Hill during the attack in '64 that the Confederates made. Well, later on, Tom Buford would kill John Milton Elliott, who was a judge here in Frankfort, also a Confederate soldier as well. So these people had lives before and after the war, and while Jim gives us the history of what was happening, we also have a history of some short bios on the individuals that fought from Frankfort, Franklin County. And it's important, like Jerry said, everybody has a story. And I know that once this book gets out, that the public, some of them will say, well, how come you don't have our great-grandfather in there? This relates to everything we know personally as far as what the war is and who fought in it from Frankfort, Franklin County as of this year. We also have a segment in it that deals with Green Hill Cemetery and the history of the African American monument. There's only 4 monuments in the United States. One is here in Frankfort.
And you all will get those calls, because I have gotten, I don't know how many saying, well, why didn't you talk about my grandfather who was in the feud? So,
Well, it sounds like a fascinating book, and it's from Frankfort Heritage Press. Again, gentlemen, thank you for being on the program today. I hope to see you all at the Kentucky Book Fair again on November 15th, 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Find out more about the Kentucky Book Fair at kybookfair.blogspot.com, or you can like us on Facebook. So mark your calendar, November 15th, and we'll see you there. Thank you.